Alright, this week we're going to go with a variation on a classic pattern. We're going to go with a Hare's ear. This is the one, like if you look at my nymph boxes these days, this is the Hare's ear that I tie and fish almost exclusively. And quite honestly, when I'm nymphing, probably 90% of the time I'm going to have this on. The nymphing, as anybody who pays much attention well knows already, it doesn't happen too often these days, but it does happen on occasion. The majority of the time it's the big bugs that we're throwing around. But, you know, we go down to the Gallatin or whatever it may be, you know, some stretches on the Madison, certain times a year we'll do some nymphing, and this is one of my go-tos. So much so that a lot of times when I run a 2-nymph rig that I'll have 2 of these on, you know, probably the bigger one down in the bottom, smaller up top, whatever it may be. But said all that to reinforce that this is a very effective pattern. Just some minor tweaks on this one from the original, but we're going to go ahead and speak through those. Before we get started though, we'll just go through, you know, our tail is going to be a Coq de Leon, and the big thing that I wanted to highlight on was your different options for dubbing. This is just the hairline. This is just basically a hare's mask that has been through a coffee grinder, whatever it may have been. And it's just really fine. You get some really nice picked out guard hairs in there. I tend to go with these just because they're a little bit quicker for me to work with. This is another option you have. This is just natural rabbit dubbing. This seems to have a little bit more of the fuzziness in it and maybe a little bit less on the guard hair side. Still, I mean, either one are going to work. It's just how you want your nymph to come out looking. And then another option that you have is you can just go with the actual mask. And with this, I mean, you can get really heavy on the guard hair. So if you want like a more leg-like effect to the thorax of your fly, then that would be the way to go. I mean, I just go through and I pick on these, you know, randomly. I'll just go through here and get some fuzz, get in, you know, right on, like right around the eyes and everything, get that real nice guard hair type thing, and then just kind of blend that, throw it in a loop and spin it up and you're done. But we'll go ahead and get zoomed in here. Dan had wrote me and said that I should get with the times and get a second camera angle. Well, I tried it. It's definitely something that I want to do. I tried it, but I got to do some equipment upgrades, computer and all of that just isn't quite good enough for editing videos with 2 camera angles, and got to address a lighting issue and a couple other things, another monitor, but that's going to be coming here eventually. I would say probably in the next 4 to 6 months hopefully, so maybe we'll go back and revisit some of the more popular videos and do those with different camera angles. But until then, we're stuck doing this old school 1 camera angle, me BSing. So to start on this one, I'm just going to go ahead and get a quick thread base down. I'm just tying with this rusty brown 8/0 thread today. Nothing, like I said before with my nymphs, I don't get hung up on specific colors. There are times, like if I'm tying with a black bead head or something like that, a lot of times I'll try and match it and I'll go with a black thread or vice versa, whatever it may be. Whatever color, I'll try and match it up a little bit, but that's really the only time. I mean, if you want to tie with maroon, pink, whatever color, it's up to you. I really don't see thread color being a huge deterrent to the fish. So we're going with rusty brown today. So we're going to get this Coq de Leon in here. I'm going to go probably 1 1/4 times the length of the hook. This is a Daiichi 1560. This is a size 14. I'll tie these in probably 10 to 16, maybe on occasion, and run them down to an 18. But for the most part, I usually stick with the 14s and 16s. And we'll leave that in there and just trim some of that mess out of the way. Check my monitor, make sure that that's good. Could probably come in just a touch. That looks alright. Alright, then we're going to go with a rib on this. You don't necessarily have to if you don't want. You can go with a ribless fly if you want. I just like the little bit of extra flash that you get in it. Just kind of sets the body off a little bit. That, and it helps bring down the bulk on the body portion of the fly just slightly. I mean, it's not real noticeable. I mean, you have to give it a pretty good inspection to even notice, but it does cut down on the bulk some, slenders that back half out. So that's why I tend to go with the rib on this one. So we're just going to do a quick dubbing loop, and if you want to do just a, just a quick finger rope or whatever it may be at this point, feel free to. I mean, you can certainly do that. I like the way that it looks. It's just a little bit more picked out, and in all honesty, it doesn't really take that much extra time to throw this loop together, so I tend to do these. So I'm going to start with a slightly lighter color. I think this is natural, and then I have the dark Hare's deer that I'm going to work with in the front. If you look at most of the nymphs that you see, dig under some rocks or whatever, most of the nymphs that you see, they have the back portion seems to be a little bit lighter than the thorax and the legs and everything. And this is completely unnecessary. I mean, you can go one color the entire way through, and I think you would, I'm certain that you would be fine. But I don't know, I just like doing this. It maybe keeps the boredom down when you're tying a bunch of these in a row. Seeing some different colors on there or messing around with different combinations kind of keeps the boredom to a minimum, I guess. So I took and I ran that the entire way up to the front, and that's just going to help me with a little bit of bulk there. I'm going to trim some of that out, and it's going to get captured by the counter wrap anyhow, but I'll just trim some of that mess out of there. And then we're going to counter wrap with this gold wire. Just nice, evenly spaced, right up to our 2/3 point where we're going to tie in our thorax. So it's going to be 2/3 body, 1/3 thorax. And then we'll go ahead and tie in our wing case. For this, you can use the turkey tail feathers if you want. I'm going to go with the Peacock. These are just 3 Peacock curls, and I have those tied in reverse. So on this, the portion that I'm tying in is the brittle tips and everything. This portion, toward the back is going to be the actual stems right there. And when you do that, I mean, all it really does is it ensures that your tiny little barbs and everything are going back toward the bend of the hook. It seems to be a little bit more durable that way, and it gives a little bit more profile, but the trout really aren't inspecting them near as close as we think they are. So if you happen to tie them in the opposite way, I think it'll be alright. Alright, same thing. We're going to go with another dubbing loop here. And like I said before, I'm going to change the color up on this. It's just going to be slightly darker. Probably won't be very noticeable from the camera side or at all, quite honestly. It's not going to be very noticeable, but there is a subtle difference. Sometimes I'll do like a dark brown up in the front end too, just to really offset it. But I don't think that that's going to make or break you catching fish or not. Where your drift is, where your fly's at in the water column, that's going to be the determining factor, not how many different colors you have in your thorax or wing case. So I'm going to let this one get a little bit more aggressive. I'm going to have a little bit more material. I'm probably not going to use half of what's in this loop, but I want it to have a distinct taper throughout, and I want this front section to be a lot more heavy than the slender back half on the body. So that's the reason for the little bit of extra material. And before I trim this, I'm going to get that out of the way. And just going to build up a little bit of a thread base. Now this is what's going to set this fly apart. For bright days, I absolutely, this is my go-to. If I have a good sunny day out there, this is the fly that I'm tying on when I'm nymphing. And all this is just some Ice Dub UV Pearl. And it's very minimal. You know, I'm going to have probably maybe a half a dozen strands on each side, if that. I mean, it's, you don't want to overdo this, but it's just subtle enough, and when that light catches this, the reflection that you get is unbelievable. I mean, you can see this nymph at times, depending on the depth that you're fishing. You can see this nymph running through the water, and you know, sometimes that's just enough to catch the eye where a fish will move a little bit more for it, or entice them into eating. So now we just folded our Peacock over, we threw in our wing case there, and then I'm going to go ahead and whip finish this real quick. My fat fingers probably won't allow me to do this by hand, so I'm just going to whip finish this. I'm going to clean up some thread wraps and everything, get rid of some of that excess material that I have in there, and then I'll go ahead and get rid of this. The last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this UV, and all I'm doing is I'm taking this right back. You can see where my tail starts. I'm just going to take one of my scissors and I'm going to push it right through there. I got one that escaped me, and I'll trim that up. But you can see, hopefully, in this, I'll put my hand behind it, you can probably see it better against my shirt, but you can see that flash that's in there, and I'm telling you, there's something to it. I've done extremely well on this pattern over the last couple of years. But there you can see, hopefully, we got the bigger thorax and, you know, the more slender body portion, a nice slender tail on this one. A lot of times you'll see they'll use, we'll go ahead and zoom out here, we're done with the tying portion of this, but a lot of the times you'll see, like, they'll just go ahead and cut off a clump of this really thick tail, or the face or the mask material, and they'll just run that back there, and the tail just looks like, you know, it looks like you could probably tie a dozen flies with the amount that some of them use, and it's too much in my opinion. So I like this Coq de Leon. You run that, it's really slender, you get that nice barred effect going back there, and it gives a better look to the fly in my opinion. But that's enough rambling for a hare's ear. If you guys have any questions or comments on this one, leave them with me. We'll get back to you, but thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next week.